Welcome back to my channel, Trash to Teach.
Right now, every time you type something into ChatGPT, that message leaves your computer, travels to a server you don't control, gets stored, gets logged, and in some cases, gets used to train the next version of the model. You don't see any of that. You just see the answer. There's another way. In the next 30 minutes, I'm going to show you how to run a real, capable AI language model entirely on your own. Windows 11 computer. No internet connection required after setup, no account, no subscription, no company reading your conversations. It's called Ollama, and by the end of this video, you'll have it installed. You'll have your first model running, you'll have a proper chat interface set up, and you'll understand exactly which model to pick for your hardware. This is a complete beginner guide. I'm assuming you've never opened a terminal before, and that's fine. I'm going to walk through every single click, every single command, and every single thing that can go wrong along the way. Stick around, because there's a section near the end on troubleshooting that will save you hours if something doesn't work the first time. Let's get into it. If you're new here, welcome to Trash to Teach, where we take free and open source tools and turn them into things you can actually use, without paying a subscription and without handing your data to a big tech company. If that sounds like your kind of channel, consider subscribing. It genuinely helps this content reach more people. Here's exactly what we're covering today, in order. Number 1. What Ollama actually is and why running AI locally matters, even if you don't consider yourself a privacy person. Number 2. The hardware requirements, so you know before you start whether your PC can handle this, and what to expect if it's older hardware. Number 3. The actual download and installation process on Windows 11, step by step. Number 4. Verifying the install and running your very first AI model from the terminal. Number 5. Understanding model sizes and quantization, so you're not just blindly picking a model and wondering why it's slow or why it gives bad answers. Number 6. Installing a proper graphical chat interface called Open WebUI, so you're not stuck typing into a black terminal window forever. Number 7. Checking whether your GPU is actually being used, because this makes an enormous difference in speed. Number 8. A full troubleshooting section covering the most common errors people hit on Windows. And number 9. My personal recommendations on which models to start with, depending on your goals, whether that's coding help, general chat, or document analysis. That's a lot of ground, so let's not waste any more time.
What is Ollama and why run AI locally? Let's start with the basics. Ollama is a free open-source tool that lets you download and run large language models directly on your own computer. Think of it like this. ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and Claude all run on massive data centers full of expensive GPUs that you access over the internet. Ollama flips that model. Instead of sending your questions to someone else's server, it downloads a compressed version of an AI model onto your hard drive, and your own computer's processor, or ideally, your graphics card, does the actual thinking. Now, why would you want to do this instead of just using a free chatbot online? There are a few really solid reasons. Reason 1, privacy. When you run a model locally, nothing you type ever leaves your machine. No logs, no servers, no terms of service that let a company use your conversations for training data. If you're a writer working on an unpublished manuscript, a developer working with proprietary code, or you just don't like the idea of a corporation having a permanent record of everything you've ever asked an AI, this matters a lot. Reason 2, no internet required. Once the model is downloaded, it runs completely offline. You could be on a plane, in a cabin with no signal, or dealing with an internet outage, and your local AI still works exactly the same. Reason 3, no subscription fees. Cloud AI services often gate their best features behind a monthly payment, and even the free tiers usually have usage limits, a certain number of messages per day, rate limiting during peak hours, that sort of thing. Ollama is completely free, forever, and there are no message limits because you're using your own hardware. Reason 4, no censorship or corporate content policy layered on top of every response. Cloud services apply their own content filters and guidelines on top of the model. Locally, you're running the model closer to how the original creators trained it, without an additional corporate policy layer intercepting every response. I'll add the obvious caveat here that comes with responsibility, and you should still use these tools sensibly and legally. Reason 5. It's genuinely educational. Running your own AI stack teaches you things about how these systems actually work under the hood tokens, context windows, quantization, inference concepts that make you a more informed user of AI in general, whether that's local or cloud-based. Now, I want to set realistic expectations here, because I'm not going to oversell this to you. A model running on your home PC is not going to match the raw intelligence of the largest cloud-hosted models from the big AI labs. Those run on hardware that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars per server rack. What you're getting locally is a smaller, compressed model that is still surprisingly capable for most everyday tasks, summarizing text, answering general questions, writing and debugging code, brainstorming, drafting emails, but it's not going to be doing cutting-edge scientific research at PhD level. For 90% of what most people actually use AI chatbots for day-to-day, a good local model running through Ollama will absolutely get the job done. Ollama itself is maintained as an open-source project. It works on Windows, Mac, and Linux, and it supports dozens of different model families: Llama from Meta, Mistral, Gemma from Google, Qwen, DeepSeek, Phi from Microsoft, and many more. You're not locked into one company's model. You can download as many as you want and switch between them freely, assuming you have the disk space. All right, with the why out of the way, let's talk about whether your computer can actually handle this. System requirements, what you actually need. This is a section people love to skip, and it's the one that causes 90% of the "why is this so slow" comments. So let's actually go through it properly. First, the operating system. You need Windows 10, version 22H2 or later, or Windows 11. Since this video is specifically about Windows 11, if you're on that, you're already covered. Second, RAM, your system memory. This is the single most important factor for whether a model will even run at all. Here's a rough guide. If you have 8 gigabytes of RAM, you can run the smallest model's things in the 1 to 3 billion parameter range. They're not going to be brilliant, but they work, and they're a great way to test everything out. If you have 16 gigabytes of RAM, which is the sweet spot for most modern laptops and desktops, you can comfortably run 7 to 8 billion parameter models, which is where things start to get genuinely useful for everyday tasks. If you have 32 gigabytes or more, you can start running 13 to 14 billion parameter models, and even dip into some larger ones depending on how they're compressed. If you have 64 gigabytes or more, which is less common on consumer machines, but not rare among enthusiasts, you can run some genuinely large, very capable models. Third, storage. Models range anywhere from about 1 gigabyte for the tiniest ones, up to 40 or 50 gigabytes for the large ones. I'd recommend having at least 20 to 30 gigabytes of free space free before you start, just so you have room to download a couple of different models and compare them, which is something I'd encourage you to do. Fourth, and this is the one that matters most for speed, your graphics card. Ollama can run entirely on your CPU, your regular processor, with no graphics card involved at all. It will work, but it will be noticeably slower. You might be waiting several seconds per sentence, rather than getting near-instant responses. If you have a dedicated NVIDIA GPU, ideally with 6 gigabytes of video memory or more, Ollama will automatically detect it and use it for acceleration, and the difference in speed is dramatic. We're talking potentially 5 to 10 times faster generation. AMD GPUs are also supported through ROCm on newer cards, and Apple Silicon Macs get GPU acceleration automatically too, though that's outside the scope of this Windows-focused video. If you don't have a dedicated graphics card at all, you're on integrated graphics. Like an Intel or AMD chip built into the processor, don't worry. It still works. It'll just be running on CPU, and I'd recommend sticking to the smaller models I mentioned earlier to keep things responsive. One more thing worth mentioning. Ollama does not require an internet connection to run once set up, but you obviously need internet to do the initial download of the application and of each model you want to use. Some of these downloads are large, so if you're on a limited or metered connection, keep that in mind. All right, if your machine checks these boxes or even close to them, you're good to go. Let's move on to the actual installation. Step 1. Downloading Ollama. Open your web browser. I'm using it right here on screen, and go to ollama.com. That's OLLAMA.com. I'll also put this link in the description below so you can just click straight through instead of typing it. Once you're on the home page, you'll see a big, obvious download button, usually right in the center of the page. Click it. The website should automatically detect that you're on Windows and offer you the correct installer. If for any reason it doesn't, there's usually a small drop-down or set of tabs near the download button letting you manually select Windows, macOS, or Linux. Just make sure Windows is selected. Click the download button and your browser will start pulling down a file called something like ollamasetup.exe. This file is small, usually under a couple hundred megabytes, because it's just the installer. The actual AI models get downloaded separately, later, and those are the big files. While that's downloading, let me point out, Ollama is completely free and open source. You do not need to create an account, you do not need to enter an email address, you do not need a credit card. If any website is asking you for payment information to download Ollama, you are not on the official site, so double-check that URL is exactly ollama.com. Once the download finishes, look in your Downloads folder or check your browser's download bar at the bottom or top of the window, and you should see ollamasetup.exe sitting there ready to go. Step 2. Installing Ollama on Windows 11. Now let's actually install it. Double-click that ollamasetup.exe file. Windows might show you a smart screen pop-up saying it's protecting your PC from an unrecognized app. This is completely normal for smaller open-source applications that haven't paid for the more expensive code signing certificates that big corporations use. Click More Info, and then click Run Anyway. This is the official, legitimate installer. This warning simply appears for any app that hasn't gone through Microsoft's paid verification process. The Ollama installer window will pop up. It's refreshingly simple. There's genuinely almost nothing to configure. You'll see an Install button. Click it. The installer will run for anywhere from a few seconds to about a minute, depending on your machine. You'll see a progress bar move across the screen. There's no need to select an install location, no need to choose components, no license agreement to scroll through for 5 minutes. It really is just click Install and wait. Once it finishes, the installer window will close automatically, and here's an important detail. Ollama installs itself as a background service. That means it starts running automatically, and it will also automatically launch every time you start your computer from now on. You'll see a small llama icon appear in your system tray down in the bottom right corner of your screen near the clock. You might need to click the small upward arrow to see hidden icons if it's not immediately visible. That icon being there means the Ollama service is actively running in the background, ready to accept commands. You generally don't need to click on it or interact with it directly. It just sits there quietly, and we're going to talk to it through the terminal instead, which is what we'll do next. If you want to confirm the installation location, by default, Ollama installs itself under your user folder, and the actual downloaded models get stored in a folder path that typically looks like this: c:\users\your username /.ollama/models. I'm mentioning this now because later, if you ever need to free up disk space or move your models to a different drive, that's the folder you're looking for. I'll cover how to change that default location in the troubleshooting section later in this video. Step 3. Opening the terminal and verifying the install. Now we need to open a terminal to actually talk to Ollama. On Windows 11, the easiest way to do this is to click the Start button or press the Windows key on your keyboard and simply type the word Terminal. You should see an app called Windows Terminal or PowerShell appear at the top of the results. Click it to open it. If you've genuinely never used a terminal before, don't be intimidated by it. It's just a text-based way of giving your computer instructions. You type a command, press enter, and it does the thing. That's really all there is to it for what we're doing today. Once your terminal window is open, type the following, exactly as I say it, then press enter. Ollama dash dash version. So that's the word Ollama. Then 2 dashes, then the word version. All lowercase, no spaces around the dashes. If everything installed correctly, you should see a response showing the version number, something like Ollama version 0. Something point something. If you see that, congratulations. Ollama is properly installed and running on your system. If instead you get an error saying the term Ollama is not recognized, don't panic. This almost always means one of 2 things. Either the installation didn't fully complete, in which case I'd recommend restarting your computer and trying the version check again, since sometimes Windows needs a restart for new system commands to be recognized. Or, less commonly, there was an issue with the installer itself, in which case I'd recommend re-downloading it from ollama.com and running the installer again. I'll go into more detail on this and other errors in the troubleshooting section later in the video, so if you hit a wall here, skip ahead. I've got you covered. Assuming that worked, let's move on to the exciting part, actually running an AI model. Step 4, downloading and running your first model. This is the moment everything's been building toward. In your terminal, type the following command, Ollama run llama 3.2. That's Ollama, space, run space, llama 3.2. Llama, the number 3, a period, and the number 2 all as one word with no spaces. Press enter. Here's what's about to happen. Since this is the very first time you've asked for this particular model, Ollama recognizes it doesn't have it yet, and it will automatically start downloading it from Ollama's model library. You'll see a progress bar appear in the terminal showing the download percentage, the download speed, and roughly how much data is left. This particular model is around 2 gigabytes, so depending on your internet speed, this might take anywhere from 30 seconds to a few minutes. While that's downloading, let me explain what's actually happening here in plain terms. Llama 3.2 is the name of a specific AI model created by Meta, the company behind Facebook and Instagram, and released as an open-weight model, meaning anyone is free to download and run it. The number we typed by default pulls a moderately sized, well-balanced version of that model, good for testing things out on almost any hardware. Once the download completes, the terminal will briefly show it loading the model into memory, and then you'll see a simple prompt appear, usually looking like this, a greater than symbol waiting for you to type something. This means the model is loaded and ready. You are now talking directly to an AI running entirely on your own computer, with 0 internet connection required from this point forward. Let's test it. Type a simple question, something like, explain what a neural network is in 2 sentences. Press enter. Watch that. Text is streaming back to you in real time, generated word by word, entirely by your own hardware. No API call to a server somewhere, no company logging that question. That response was generated locally. Try asking it a few more things. Ask it to write a short poem. Ask it a coding question. Ask it to summarize a paragraph you paste in. Get a feel for how it responds and how fast it is on your particular hardware. When you're done experimenting and want to exit this chat, simply type the word /by, that's a / followed by the word by, and press enter. That closes the current session and returns you to your regular terminal. One really important thing to understand, the model doesn't unload from your computer's memory or disappear when you type /by. You can start talking to it again anytime just by typing Ollama run llama 3.2 again, and because it's already downloaded, it will load up almost instantly this time. No download needed. Understanding model sizes and quantization. Before we move on to setting up a proper visual chat interface, I want to spend a few minutes on something that trips up almost every beginner, understanding what these model names and numbers actually mean, because picking the right model for your hardware makes an enormous difference in your experience. When you browse the Ollama model library on their website, you'll see model names followed by numbers like 1B, 3B, 8B, 13B, and so on. That B stands for billion, and it refers to the number of parameters in the model, essentially, the number of adjustable values the AI uses to generate its responses. Generally speaking, more parameters means a smarter, more capable model, but it also means a bigger download, and it needs more RAM and more processing power to run smoothly. Here's a rough mental model to use. A 1 to 3 billion parameter model is fast and lightweight, good for simple tasks, runs on almost anything, including older laptops, but it will make more mistakes and struggle with complex reasoning. A 7 to 8 billion parameter model is the sweet spot for most people with a modern computer. It's noticeably smarter, still runs at a very usable speed on most 16 gigabyte RAM machines, and handles the vast majority of everyday tasks well. A 13 to 14 billion parameter model is quite a bit smarter again, but you'll want at least 16, ideally 32 gigabytes of RAM to run it comfortably, and a decent GPU helps a lot here. Anything beyond that, you're getting into territory that really benefits from a dedicated graphics card with a good amount of video memory, or you'll be waiting quite a while for responses. Now, the second concept, quantization. You'll often see model tags with something like Q4 or Q8 attached. Quantization is essentially a compression technique. It takes the model's underlying numbers and represents them with less precision, which shrinks the file size dramatically and makes it run faster, in exchange for a small, usually barely noticeable, reduction in output quality. Ollama's default downloads are almost always a well-balanced quantization level, something like 4-bit, which the community has generally found to be the best trade-off between quality and speed and size for most people. Unless you have a specific reason to change it, you can trust the default. To browse the full library of available models and see their sizes before downloading, go to ollama.com/search, or just click the Models link on their homepage. Each model page shows you the different size variants available and roughly how much disk space each one takes up, which lets you make an informed choice before you commit to a download. A couple of commands worth knowing at this point. To see a list of every model you've already downloaded onto your machine, type Ollama list. To remove a model you no longer want, freeing up disk space, type Ollama RM followed by the model name. For example, Ollama RM Llama 3.2. And to download a model without immediately jumping into a chat session with it, you can use Ollama pull followed by the model name, which just fetches it and stores it for later use. Those three commands, list, RM, and pull, alongside run, cover almost everything you'll need day to day. Step 5. Installing a proper chat interface. Open WebUI.
Typing into a black terminal window works, but it's not exactly a pleasant everyday experience, and it definitely doesn't feel like the polished chat apps you're used to. So now let's set up a proper browser-based graphical interface, so you get something that looks and feels like ChatGPT, but running entirely on your own machine. The most popular tool for this is called Open WebUI, and it's also completely free and open source. There are a couple of ways to install Open WebUI, but the cleanest and most reliable way on Windows is through something called Docker, which is a tool for running applications in self-contained, isolated packages called containers. If you've never used Docker before, don't worry, I'm going to walk through the whole thing. First, go to docker.com and download Docker Desktop for Windows. Run the installer the same way we did with Ollama. Click through the installer, accept the defaults, and let it complete. Docker Desktop may ask you to enable a Windows feature called WSL2, which stands for Windows Subsystem for Linux version 2. If it prompts you for this, just follow its on-screen instructions to enable it. It usually involves a single click and a restart of your computer. Once Docker Desktop is installed, open it and let it finish its startup process. You'll see it running in your system tray with a small whale icon. Now open your terminal again, and we're going to type one command that downloads and starts Open WebUI, connected to your existing Ollama installation. Here's the command: docker run -d space --name space open-webui space -p space 3000:8080 space --add-host equals host.docker.internal:host-gateway space -v space open-webui:/app/backend/data space --restart space always space ghcr.io/open-webui/open-web UI:main. I know that's a long command, so I'm putting the exact text in the description box below this video, along with a link to the official Open WebUI documentation, so you can just copy and paste it directly into your terminal instead of typing it by hand. Copying and pasting avoids any small typing mistakes that could cause errors. Press Enter after pasting it in. The first time you run this, Docker will need to download the Open WebUI container image, which is a few hundred megabytes, so give it a minute or two depending on your connection. Once it finishes and settles, open your web browser and go to this address, localhost:3000. That's localhost, a colon, and the number 3000. You should see the Open WebUI interface load up. Clean, modern, dark-themed by default, looking very similar to ChatGPT's interface. The first time you access it, it'll ask you to create a local admin account. I want to be clear here. This account is stored entirely on your own computer, inside that Docker container. It is not sent anywhere. It's not a cloud account. It's purely a local login so that Open WebUI can support multiple user profiles if you ever want that. Fill in a username, email, and password of your choosing and click through to sign in. Once you're in, look for a model selection dropdown, usually near the top of the chat window. Open WebUI automatically detects any models you've already pulled through Ollama, so you should see Llama 3.2 available to select right there. Click it, and now you have a full, polished chat interface, complete with conversation history saved in a sidebar, the ability to run multiple conversations at once, file upload support so you can chat about the contents of documents, and a bunch of other quality-of-life features you'd expect from a modern AI chat app. Take a moment to explore this interface. Start a new chat, ask it something, notice how it streams the response just like before, but now in a much nicer visual format. You can rename conversations, delete old ones, and even download new models directly from within this interface without going back to the terminal. There's usually a small settings or admin panel where you can search for and pull new models with just a click. This Open WebUI setup, combined with Ollama running in the background, is genuinely a complete self-hosted replacement for a cloud chatbot subscription running entirely on hardware you already own. Checking GPU acceleration. Let's quickly check whether your GPU is actually being used, because this is where a lot of the speed comes from, and it's easy to accidentally end up running purely on CPU without realizing it, which will feel much slower than it needs to be. Open Task Manager. Right-click your taskbar and select it, or press Ctrl, Shift, and Escape together. Click on the Performance tab and select GPU from the list on the left. Now, keep this window visible, and in a separate terminal window, start a chat with your model again using Ollama Run Llama 3.2, and ask it a fairly long question, something that will make it generate a longer response. Watch the GPU graph while it's generating text. If you see GPU usage spike up noticeably during generation, that confirms Ollama is successfully using your graphics card for acceleration. If you don't see any GPU activity at all, and instead your CPU usage is the thing spiking, that means it's running on CPU only. If you have a dedicated NVIDIA graphics card and you're seeing this, the most common cause is an outdated graphics driver. Head to NVIDIA's website, download the latest driver for your specific card model, install it, restart your computer, and try again. Ollama automatically detects compatible NVIDIA GPUs through something called CUDA, and having current drivers is essential for that detection to work properly. If you're on a laptop with both integrated graphics and a dedicated GPU, sometimes Windows' power settings default demanding applications to the weaker integrated graphics to save battery. You can usually override this in your Windows graphics settings by searching Graphics Settings in the Start menu, finding your terminal application or Ollama in the list, and manually setting it to prefer your high-performance dedicated GPU.